So a friend was talking to me today just about some family stuff, and he started telling a story about his sister-in-law. And he had told me this story before, and I listened. And about 10 or 15 minutes into this story, this monologue, I noticed that my body was hurting, that my mind was trying to run, and that somebody who I love and love talking to was making me want to get off the phone with them as quickly as possible. So I stopped him. And you know, when you put the brakes on something, you have to put the brakes on softly, like when you're stopping a car, and you have to continue putting the brakes on. It'll inertia wants to keep it pulling, and you have to be like, no, stop. He said, that's a skill you have. You are really good at just shutting things down. And I was like, now, it's important to me that I don't make you feel suppressed, because that is not where the healing happens. And he had seen me do this to a friend of mine that I was introducing him to, who has a tendency to, and a lot of people have this tendency, to tell a story, and in the telling of that story, bring up all of the emotions from that occurrence. So maybe it's something that happened 25 years ago, or when you were 7, and you start telling the story, and then all of a sudden you are that traumatized, angry, scared, pissed off person all over again. And you're telling the story and you're recounting the events, and all of the emotions are running through your body. And he saw me just deflect this person's conversation, monologue, just kind of move it this way and move it this way. And at one point, I didn't know what to do. So I just walked up and hugged him and held him until he stopped talking. And I, to the friend I was having the phone call with, who, had said that I was skilled at doing this, a skill I have, I admit that when I'm in a situation with somebody who holds me hostage in monologues, like if you're in a grocery store or at a gathering of some sort, and somebody's just like, oh, and then this thing happened with my mother, and this, and they're just constantly going and going and going, and it has nothing to do with you. It's just they need some kind of audience or something, and they're just vomiting logorrhea. In those situations, I will excuse myself, not waiting for them to hear me, because they're lost in monologue, so they can't hear me, they're not respecting me, and I will just turn and walk away. And I have no problem doing with that, and I've done it to many of those people. It doesn't upset me at all if it irritates them, because they're being incredibly disrespectful to my mind and energy and life, because it's like energy vampire, some people call it. It's just sucking attention. Sometimes nowadays I'm just like, what, you haven't discovered Facebook yet? This is what Facebook's for, Instagram, it's what social media is for. You just spew all your stuff out there so that you feel like somebody can hear you. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now, but I'm thinking of this as, like many of my videos, a type of lecture or essay. I flipped a coin, a digital coin, to see if I would do this written or spoken. Odd spoken. So this friend that this was happening with on the phone, I said, I introduced another friend to you a few days ago, and he told me after he talked with you that you held him hostage, ranting about politics. And it occurs to me now that you're ranting this story about your sister-in-law, and you ranted about politics to this other guy you just met on the first phone call conversation with him you've had. And you've never done that to me before. You've never ranted politics at me. I know you care about them. I've seen your Facebook feed, and I know that you reblog the angry, well, at least he was doing in the end of 2020, like so many people were, was reblogging all these angry political things. And I said, so let's take a step back and see what's really going on, because it's not the news. Now, when I was with him a month ago, he puts the television on sleep and has it play for like an hour to help him go to sleep at night. That's like the worst thing for me. I don't watch TV and it just drives me crazy. And he usually had it on the news. And one night he was like, oh, do you not like the news? And I said, oh no, I think it's a terrorist organization. That's one of the most toxic things that people subject themselves to every day. Like it's as bad as fast food. But no, it's worse than fast food. But yeah, I've had this whole thing lately where it's come to my attention that I think most news channels are terrorist organizations, be them liberal or conservative. They are filled with, if you just watch, they're filled with people who are very angry, who are scared and angry, and they're convincing you why you should be scared and angry. And then maybe they'll tell you a story about a dog. They'll be like, oh, here's something innocuous, and there you need to be terrified and angry about what's going on. And that whole, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention thing. Okay, is it worth being angry? This friend of mine who I'm speaking about, he is getting results back tomorrow to know if he has cancer. So I said, I want to respect that you are under a lot of stress right now. He's back in New York. New York is stressful. He's working outside. His job has him working outside. It's cold as fuck. He had a gas main blow last week. I'm just like, you've had a lot of stressful things going on in your life, and tomorrow you're going to find out if you have cancer. So let's examine for a moment that it's not, yes, I understand it's the anniversary of the insurrection on January 6th, and that's a scary thing, and there's nothing you can do about it. So it's good that you're concerned about it, but driving yourself crazy over it is not the real thing. And, this story about your sister-in-law and how that affected your brother, like I understand that that's, real emotional thing that happened in your life, but that's not why you're obsessing over these things right now. You're obsessing over these things because you are afraid of dying. You're afraid of suffering terribly and being sick. He's at an age of his life where he's like aiming at retirement, right? And one of the reasons that I've lived the life I've lived is my grandfather retired at my friend's age at 54, I think. 54, I think it was. He retired so he could enjoy his life. He retired early so he could enjoy his golden years. And a few months after he retired, he got a stroke that debilitated him. And as he was recovering from that, he got a heart attack. And he lived like another 14 years, I think, 12 or 14 years. Heart attack, stroke, heart attack, stroke, heart attack, stroke. He, as he was recovering, he was so frustrated because he was the man, and he started beating my grandmother because he was being driven crazy by not being able to function. And she had a heart attack and died. It was bad. And that was one of the reasons why I was like, and my mother's father died before I was even born. So I thought, I could live my whole life working a job I hate to support a family I resent, because this was kind of the masculine lineage thing I come from, so that I can retire to enjoy my life and then die or suffer terribly of debilitating illnesses. And this is a situation my friend's in. He's aiming at retirement. He's set up all this stuff so that he can be happy when he stops working. He might die in a few months. He had a friend that just died last year in that same way. She found out she had a pain in her back. She went to a doctor. She was dead 6 weeks later. Cancer. You don't know. You don't know if you're going to die in your sleep tonight. You don't know if you're going to get hit by a car tomorrow. You don't know. So, if you're going to die in the next few minutes, is it worth being angry about the insurrection? Is it worth being angry about the fall of democracy? Is it worth being angry about how bad the world's getting? Oh, and if you really want to just do some research on history, the humanity's been a fucking shit show for thousands of years, and it's actually more civilized in most ways than it ever has been. And yeah, it's terrible. It's not worse than it was in the 50s. We just know a lot more now. Anyway, let's not argue about that. Point is, you don't get to make choices about what the whole world's doing. Best you can do is vote, or how you spend your money, or direct action. But for the most part, most of us aren't doing big scale direct action. We're doing little direct action. And you can do that without being crazy about what you see on television. Point I'm making is he was traumatized, yes, and the actual fear he had about all of his plans being for naught, him not being able to enjoy this life that he's setting up for his retirement, and just the general everyday fear of dying, coupled with the last 2 years of fear of everyone we love dying all the time, which is the real thing that we have about all of us understanding that we're going to die, that we might die today or tomorrow or in 40 years or we don't know. And everyone we love is going to die. And we don't like thinking about that. We all know also that we're all getting older and just have to suffer the problems of getting older, not being as pretty in the conventional sense of being young and smooth and dark or whatever, or sagging or whatever. We all know that we're going to get sick, that we're going to get COVID or cancer or AIDS or heart attacks, whatever we're going to have. We're all going to get dementia. We're all going to get sick, cold, sniffles, whatever. We can't stop that. We can take all the fucking supplements and antibiotics and vaccines we want, but we're still going to get sick. You know, like, how many people can you count right now who are vaccinated and have gotten COVID recently? We tried. We're doing our best. Nothing we can do is going to prevent us from aging, getting sick, dying. And everyone that we know and love, aging, getting sick, dying. This isn't like a nightmare, like sorrow. This isn't like a shock to anyone. Everybody knows this is true. And if we can take some time to practice being okay with these truths. So I stopped him and I said, I just want you to breathe just for 3 breaths and feel your body. Now, a lot of you probably done this before, but if you never have, take a second. I'll shut up. Just breathe 3 breaths and just feel your body. What the buzzwords might call life hacking, taking a moment to just be present with what's happening right now, breathing and feeling your body, makes all of the anxiety, worry, fear just drop. Maybe only for 3 seconds or 6 seconds or 9 seconds or however long it took me to breathe 3 times. But it's really nice to give yourself a break when you're triggered, when you notice you're triggered. When you notice that you're using triggered experiences to avoid being in the present because you're afraid of dying, you're afraid of all of your plans crumbling. The tangled web of emotions, right? I used some of the skills that I'd learned from a wonderful teacher named Michael Bakucci that I've just tried to integrate into being. Where I told my friend, you know, his retirement place is this place in Florida. So I visited him at this place in Florida. He calls it his happy place. So I'm like, right now, go to your happy place. You can't get on a plane or get on a train. Just close your eyes. Remember what it was like to be on the beach with me watching the sunset. And just feel it, smell it, feel the breeze, recreate the image as much as possible. I took photos. So in my mind, like I can see the light on the water and the clouds by the sun and remember the whole experience. And I was like, just feel that on your body. He's like, oh my God, I can feel it in my body. You can do that about any happy experience you've ever had in your life. And the easiest way to do it is just to close your eyes and say, what simple, happy experience have I had in my life? And the first thing that comes to mind, you just keep it simple. You don't go into the details of the whole thing that created it and what happened after. You just go to that moment when you were happy and you embody it as much as possible. Again, try to remember the taste, smell, feel, and then just let that whole feeling of happiness just suffuse your body. Let it blossom in your body. And he said, wow, this feels great. I'm smiling. I'm like, great. So now, then I talked him through the whole web of fear of death, right? Fear of cancer, fear of all of his plans crumbling. And he cried. And I'm like, great, you're embodying your actual fear and sorrow now. It's not actually about the insurrection. It's not actually about your sister-in-law. It's about your own fear of death. Tomorrow you're going to find out if you have cancer, what are you going to do? So actually, before I even went there, I said, well, let's take this sorrow you have, this terrifying sorrow, and see where it is in your body. What does it feel like? Is it tension in your shoulders? Is it pounding in your heart? Is it like electricity and needles? What does it feel like? And can you just accept that that's what fear and terror feels like? If you can't, that's fine. But if you can, just feel it, because it's real. It's your experience. It's okay to be afraid and sad about your whole plan of life crumbling and you're dying. It's okay. That's a totally reasonable response. And so he cried a little bit, and I said, now just hold that feeling, but remember the sunset and that happiness, and just bring it in from the side, like it's just fading in or being brought in on a dolly. You have them right in the same space. They don't have to interact. They can just be next to each other, and just, what does that feel like in your body? What my teacher friend Michael Pacucci called that happy place, he called it a resource. That if you can take the time to go to a place where everything felt okay, the magic about everything feeling okay is that you can relax and open. If you can relax and open, you have infinite energy. There's the whole universe, right? So that can get more complicated. You can spread your sense of self into the whole universe. But just in a real simple human level, if you can relax and open, stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, lets everything relax, lets everything open, and let's say the spiritual energies can flow through your body easier. And on a simpler level, if you're happy and safe, your heart can open. Your body doesn't really function very well if your heart doesn't open. And if you're pissed off about the government, and if you're pissed off about your sister-in-law, and if you're scared about homeless people, and you're scared about cancer, your heart's closed. And a lot of people live most of their lives with their hearts closed. And it's withering. It's a withering experience. I lived a lot of my life with my heart closed as well. It's a very common human experience. So when you feel safe and happy, your heart gets to open, the energy gets to flow through your body better, and then the real emotions you have of fear and terror, whatever, can be okay. It's easier to be okay with them. And again, we have to be okay with we don't have to be afraid of death. But if we have a fear of death, we can be okay with that fear. It's possible. I was talking to my sister yesterday, and she was really hungover. And I'm not going to go into the whole complicated story, but she's like, it's my own fault. And I said, on one level, it's not your fault. I mean, I was like, on a big picture, it's not your fault. You're a human. You're not omniscient. You're not omnipotent. You didn't control this thing that happened with your Lyft driver. You didn't control this thing that your friends encouraged you to drink too much. You didn't control not being able to sleep all night. That's not your fault. On the other level, it's your fault that you have a whole lot of, and I unfolded everything in the story she told me, which I'm not going to recapitulate here, but I was like, you have a lot of guilt and shame, and that is what kept you up all night. And on one level, that's the only thing that you could say is your fault, is that you could take time to feel your guilt and shame and untangle it, which is like going around your room and sweeping things, putting things in order, throwing out the trash. Like, there's a lot of old shame and guilt and fear that we keep around that we just really don't need. Like, we don't need a fear of death, but it's okay to have it if you have it. If you have lots of shame and fear and guilt, it's fine. If you have them, it's fine. You don't need them, though, and life is so much freer without them. So you can take the time to feel them, to explore them, to understand where they came from just by feeling them and spending time with them, and keep saying like, okay, can I be okay with this shame? Oh God, this shame feels so terrible. What does this feel like? Where is this shame coming from? Oh yeah, there's this thing that happened with my dad when I was a kid, and there's this, etc. It unfolds and it unfolds and it unfolds, and sometimes you have to back off, and then when you can go back to it, you can just understand it. And when you can understand it, again, that could be more complicated, but let's say when you can understand it from a resource place with an open heart, with compassion, which means keeping your heart open to suffering, like understanding that you're in pain and that you're scared and that you're ashamed, fearful, guilty, whatever, and that you're like, it's okay, and I love you anyway, and you don't need this anymore, can we let go of it now? Or whatever untangling you need to do, then you're free of it. You no longer have to act unconsciously from those emotions. Emotional intelligence, hooray! I'm not pretending that I'm perfect, I'm just aware of these processes now because it's the work I've been doing, well, for my whole life, but more wisely for the last 10 years. Or less, not even 10. The story is also unfolded when I brought up my sister to my friend today. I was saying that my sister, my mother, my brother, and I are warriors with severe distrust issues. Severe distrust issues. And my father's a pathological liar, so he can't help it. So part of the blah, blah, blah was that I was like, this man, from whatever happened to him, that he's not been able to untangle. He's so deranged that he shapes reality to justify whatever he's done. So he just reshapes, and again, a lot of us have seen this happen with our last president, that he would just make up whatever reality suited his agendas. And my dad does that all the time, so I got to, I'm like very familiar with that. And my sister was, crying because she was like, I can't trust anything he says. And I was like, and what that's done to us is it's made us not trust anything around us. But you can work on noticing that that's a knee-jerk reaction and not get stuck in it. You don't have to live, because, when I arrived here in Mexico, I have like old distrust and fear issues with Mexico, which at this point I find hilarious, but unfortunately lived with until, 4 years ago? Like literally up until 4 years ago, I had some weird fear, prejudice shit that is actually very common in America. In fact, our last president was using it. That's one of the things that keyed it off for me. I was like, wait a minute. This guy's using the same prejudice bullshit that I have inside of me as a weapon against America and then the whole country of Mexico. This is obviously bullshit. And so in coming to Mexico, I'm embracing that fear and prejudice. And I'm educating myself by being amongst the real people and then listening to audiobooks and reading stuff about this culture and the history and visiting sites and trying to see the contemporary culture and the ancient culture and the history of everything that's happened, because I'm not going to go into a whole diatribe about Mexico, but here I am in Mexico. It's great and lots of other stuff. But anyway, it fired off a lot of distrust issues for me. And this man was being this local dude picked me up from the airport and he took me to all these beautiful places. And I noticed that I kept being like, what if he is going to take all my stuff? Or what if he's lying to me? Or what? I just kept doing that. And I was like, okay, you're insecure right now. And I actually noticed this happening a few days before I even came to Mexico. So I'm like, you have an insecurity thing going on right now. Don't take it seriously. When you notice it, just be like, oh, okay, I have this insecurity thing going on right now. And then I try to work with my emotions in the way I know how to work with them, which some of it's mystical and Taoist, and some of it's just being patient and compassionate and letting it go every time I notice it. But the point that I'm making is that we were traumatized. My mother was traumatized by her father. We were traumatized by our father. We're all responding to that trauma differently. When I'm talking to my friend who I was talking on the phone with about this, because I was trying to talk with him about his father, he then told me this whole story of what his father used to do to him. And it was much worse than what my father did to us, which I have said to my family that, yes, my father is a bad man, but he does his best to be good. He's not evil. He's not really a good person, I would say. I'm sorry, I love you, Dad, but he's not like the worst. So my friend's telling me the story about his dad, and he loves his dad in a way that No one in my family loves my dad anymore. But he like loves his dad. He's like a really good Italian. He really loves his parents in a cool way. I like it. I love my dad, but I can't, like, it's really hard for me to say he's a good person. But his dad did much more horrible things to him than my dad did to any of my siblings or my mother. And then and after he told me his story, which I was like, see, your dad is worse than my dad and your trauma was worse than my trauma. But I have this friend from Germany, because I ended up talking to this old German guy today when I was having lunch. And it reminded me of this friend from Germany who grew up on a farm outside of Hanover, whose father would come home drunk regularly and beat the shit out of everyone in the family, and eventually killed himself in front of the wife and kid, my friend. But after trying to kill himself a few times, over the years. So like, that's a bad dad situation, right? That's much worse than what my friend in New York had, and much worse than what I had. So yeah, my dad's a bad guy, and his dad is a bad guy, but he loves his dad. Nobody in my family has been able to, like, it really makes me sad that my dad is cast in the role of bad guy. But he has no interest in not being a bad guy. And he doesn't understand that he's a bad guy because he rearranges reality to justify everything he does. So, can't see it. All of this, talking about the news, it's not the news. It's not the news that's going to help us deal with life. You can watch the news. I talked to a guy today who worked in the news when he was younger, and he's in his late 70s, and he watches the news all day, every day, and he loves it. He's like, it doesn't stress me out at all. I'm like, either you're not feeling your body, or it doesn't stress you out at all. That could be true. Nobody's trauma, be it from bad dad, or worst dad. And that guy in Hanover is not even the worst dad, believe me. I've heard other terrible stories throughout my life. Nobody's trauma is better or worse than anybody else's trauma. Everybody's trauma is just traumatizing. When people have been traumatized, it locks inside of them, and they get triggered, and they spiel, they rant, they act out. And I've certainly seen it a lot worse in some people than it is in others, or in me, or in my family, But to be able to notice you're triggered, any of you, please, any of us, please, if we notice that we're triggered, just notice it and be like, oh, what's happening right now is I'm triggered. I am talking about an experience that isn't actually happening, but I brought up the real emotions and embodied them from when that experience happened. Or I saw something on TV, or I heard something in this lecture, or this guy said something, or something happened that triggered this, and the real emotions are here now. But I'm also here in this situation where that's not the reality for everybody else, just triggered for me, and what's really going on. And I could say it all boils down to the fear of aging, sickness, and death, and everyone we know and everything we love, and everything and everyone that we know and love being separated from us at one point, and or watching them get sick, age, and die. And understanding, I think, to a certain degree, that none of us can get away with it. That gets into a weird karmic moral thing, but that's the other part of the teaching that I'm talking about, is that this thing that, like, you can't avoid it. You can, work a good job and beat the shit out of your kids and verbally and emotionally abuse them and retire early so you can enjoy your life, and have a stroke and a heart attack for your retirement for 14 years. You don't have to go to hell. Have it right here in your own home. If we can take the time to notice our fear and our anger, stop feeding it, and learn how to let it go and let it die and be free of it. Honor that. Tune into our resources of what's good or peaceful right now, which could just be like, what does your body feel like if you just take time to feel all the pain, all the tension. Your body's screaming at you. As a massage therapist, your body's screaming at you. It's screaming at me. It's screaming at everybody. Your body's screaming. And if you just listen, you won't have to scream anymore. Just take the time to sit down or stand, just close your eyes or keep them open, whatever, and feel what your body feels like for 3 seconds or 30 minutes or 3 hours, whatever. In the present, what's really happening right now, and anything else that gets in the way of being at peace, keeping your heart open, it's just not worth it. If you find out tomorrow that you have cancer and they tell you you have 2 months to live, what are you going to do? You can't make good choices if you're lost in shame, guilt, fear, and distraction. The news, her, him, them. And if you get to that situation where they say you have 2 months to live, do you say like, oh, I can't take the time now to actually feel, I can't take the time, I haven't done the work to sort out this mess of old emotions laying around my room, cluttering up my house, then you're going to spend the last 2 months or 5 years of your life, what? Trying not to die and doing chemotherapy so you're just sick and miserable the whole time? You're going to sell your house, quit your job, go do all the things you've always thought it might be nice to do that you never did? Can you just keep doing whatever you're doing with your life and enjoy it and be grateful that that's the life you have and that you have had and that you will have and that will be the end of your life? There doesn't need to be a bucket list, does there? But this comes from somebody. People always like, when I was younger, what are you going to do when you want to retire? Like, retire from what? How do I, I don't have a house, I don't have savings, I don't have a car. I have some savings, actually. I have more savings than most people because I don't have any debt. But, I don't spend a lot of money. I spend as little time as I can making money so that I can just live, which is not always fun. And a lot of it's just wasted time. But honestly, I was thinking about this. I was talking to my sister yesterday when I was taking the bus here. There was this wave that washed through me that I was like, I'm not doing anything. I literally have no ambition, no goals. I'm just trying to fill the time in a good way until I die. That's it. Am I okay with that? Like, the youthful desires I had of somehow saving the world or changing the world or this right now, trying to get people to be aware of what they're not aware of. Does that matter? Does it matter? Should I, agonize my heart over that again? No. There's no point in agonizing my heart over that again. It's okay to just be like, okay, so if that's my life, if I have no ambitions and I have no goals, and most of my life I've had no ambitions and no goals because my ambitions have all been completely unrealistic, like changing the world or saving the world or becoming a wizard and learning how to walk through dimensions, which I kind of have, but not the way I imagined as a teenager. Adolescent. I'm so happy I can pull my beard again. I've missed it so much. Anyway, it occurred to me that when I was telling my sister about this, and this is one of the reasons I like talking and writing, is that there's certain thought process that happen and only get so far unless I'm expressing them. A big part of how I think is expressing. And the thing I like about writing and videos like this is I'm not actually holding you hostage. If you have this on, you want to have it on, or it's in the background. Like, I'm not ranting at you on the phone, and I'm not, and hopefully I'm not making your shoulders tighten up and making you feel horrible. If I am, I'm sorry, I love you. Sufjan Stevens songs playing in my head. Don't do to me what you do to yourself. that perhaps I am just trying to fill time in a good way till I die, whatever that means, however that's going to happen. And occasionally meditating and doing yoga and qigong and other cultivation, trying to eat well, take supplements, go for walks, visit places that sound nice, but generally make myself available to people who need to hear something or reflect something or say something. Just to be a vessel for some kind of connection, which I think is what I've always done the best. When I was younger, I would say like, yeah, as far as I understand, what I'm doing is just floating around and being with people who are lonely. And this was before social media, being with people who are lonely and just letting them be seen and heard. I would visit people that I met through IRC on the internet, and I would just go to their houses in suburbs, and I didn't have great heart training at that point, so I wasn't so good at keeping my heart open, but a lot of times I would just be with them, and I would listen to them, and I would see their lives, and I'd be like, oh, wow. Fortunately, I had the genuine ignorance and innocence that allowed me to be like, wow, this is your life? You go to an office and you design furniture or install electrical implements? I don't know. Whatever people's lives were fascinating to me because I hadn't seen anything. So I was honestly witnessing people's lives and being somewhat in awe and appreciative, even though I was an unhappy bitch of a child. Teenager, 20-year-old stuff. But I guess that's good work, to just float around in a human body, making myself available to talk to old German men at tables in lunch, just be a human. What was it like living at the ashram for 2 years? Oh, in Madagascar for 8 years. Oh, you have a girlfriend there. Oh, it's too expensive to fly there now. Yeah. Listening to the stories and just kind of reflecting and reminding, saying things he needed to hear. I could tell a few of the things that fell out of my mouth. He was like, yeah. It was a good conversation. And talking to my friend on the phone today and talking to this other guy that I'd never met before. That's what I've always heard about my blogging when I used to write all the time. Sometimes I just think I was fucking throwing words into a void, and then like years later there'd be this person that would hire me for a massage and be like, I read your writing for years and it helped me so much to understand that I didn't need to be this way, or that I could be free, or that I could do all these things that I'd never thought I could do. And we're all at different places in our life, and some of the places that I am is where people want to go or need to go, or I have what some people need, and to other people, my life is child's play or despicable or whatever, and it's fine. We all need different medicine. So I guess this is about me. This ending, all of it, it's just you and me and us and all of us. There's no you and me, it's just all of us. But that's enough for now. That was a good little project. 38 minutes and 55 seconds. I don't know if this will ever upload because the internet's shit here. And I'm going to prepare to go to sleep now. Wherever you are. Remember that peace, gratitude, happiness, silence, safety, spaciousness, it's always accessible to you in your own different way. But it's not outside of you. It's not even inside of you. It's just available. Like there's a cabinet right next to you. You can just open up and it has everything you need in it. It's right here. It's in here. You just have to you don't even have to remember it. You don't even have to find it. It's just there. You just need to take the time to feed yourself that, as opposed to stress, anger, fear, tension, worry. I am not going to forgive her. You don't need need to feed yourself that. You can feed yourself peace, happiness, and freedom. That's all I'm saying. Feed yourself peace, happiness, and freedom, or whatever you want. But I prefer you to eat peace, happiness, and freedom because you are what you eat, and we need more peace, happiness, and freedom. Okay, I love you. Good night.